When you first stumble across Derek Bieri on YouTube, it feels like you've discovered a neighbor down the road who just happens to resurrect forgotten cars for fun. There's no flashy studio lighting, no million-dollar garage, just Derek, a set of wrenches, and a stubborn belief that no car is too far gone. That's the magic of Vice Grip Garage. Launched in 2018, the channel quickly found its audience because it wasn't polished, scripted television. Derek filmed himself dragging home rusted-out classics, sometimes buried in barns, sometimes left to rot in fields for decades, and asking a simple question: will it run? Millions of viewers connected instantly with that premise. This wasn't about perfection or six-figure builds. It was about grit, improvisation, and the thrill of coaxing life back into something everyone else had given up on. From the very beginning, Derek's personality was as important as the cars. He cracked jokes mid-repair, called parts mint with sarcastic charm, and never hid the struggles. If something broke, or if he broke it, viewers saw it. He filmed in cold garages and muddy driveways, often with family nearby. That rawness made Vice Grip Garage feel real in a way traditional car TV rarely did. The numbers grew quickly. By 2020, episodes were drawing millions of views. Fans didn't just watch the cars, they watched Derek. His Midwest sensibility and no-nonsense attitude struck a chord with gearheads who were tired of overproduced shows. Viewers saw him as one of them, a family man balancing life, money, and a passion for old steel. But what many fans don't know is that this success came after years of personal struggle. Before YouTube, before sponsorships and recognition, Derek questioned whether he'd ever make it in the car world. And even when Vice Grip Garage started to gain momentum, a tragedy would soon strike, one that nearly ended his passion altogether. The story of Vice Grip Garage is a story of perseverance, but to understand why Derek's rise matters so much, you have to know what almost took it away. Long before YouTube, long before Vice Grip Garage was even an idea, Derek Bieri's story began in rural North Dakota. For some kids, sports or video games filled their days, but for Derek, it was old cars. His family didn't have much, but what they did have were vehicles in every condition imaginable. Some ran, many didn't, and the driveway often looked like an ever-changing lineup of projects. Derek learned quickly that if he wanted wheels, he had to figure them out himself. He wasn't sent to automotive school. He was handed a wrench and the challenge of making things work. That early exposure to rusty old machines gave him two things that would define his future: patience and grit. While other kids hung posters of new sports cars, Derek was fascinated by the broken-down relics most people overlooked. He loved the smell of grease, the satisfaction of turning a stubborn bolt, the puzzle of figuring out why an engine refused to run. By his teenage years, he was wrenching on whatever he could find: farm trucks, junkyard rescues, hand-me-down beaters. These weren't glamorous projects. They were survival cars, the kind of vehicles you fix up just enough to squeeze another year or two of life from. Those early lessons shaped his philosophy. Cars didn't need to be perfect to matter. They just needed someone willing to give them a chance. That belief, born in childhood garages and backyards, would become the foundation of Vice Grip Garage decades later. But passion doesn't pay bills, and Derek learned that the hard way. Before YouTube's success, he lived the grind that so many car lovers know too well, working long hours at regular jobs while squeezing in garage time whenever possible. Winters in North Dakota and Minnesota weren't kind to mechanics without heated shops. Derek wrenched in freezing barns, using space heaters that barely cut through the chill. His hands would crack and bleed from the cold, but the work didn't stop. Many nights stretched long past midnight, fueled by coffee and determination. Money was always tight. Rarely was there a budget for shiny new parts. Instead, Derek became a master of improvisation, reusing bolts, making parts fit when they shouldn't, and finding solutions that others would call impossible. That scrappy approach made him resourceful, but it also wore him down. There were moments when he questioned if it was worth it. Endless hours, endless frustration, and cars that often fought him every step of the way. Without recognition, without a platform, it sometimes felt like shouting into the void. What kept him going wasn't money or fame. It was the sheer love of cars and the hope that maybe, someday, the hard work would pay off. But in the years before Vice Grip Garage, Derek's devotion to family was just as strong as his devotion to cars. And that balance, between being a builder and being a husband and father, would be tested in ways he never expected. Behind the grease-stained shirts and sarcastic humor, Derek Bieri is, first and foremost, a family man. Long before YouTube, before millions of subscribers knew his name, he had a wife and children who depended on him. Every project, every late night in the garage was balanced against the responsibilities of being a husband and father. Unlike many automotive personalities, Derek didn't come from a world of unlimited budgets or corporate backing. His builds had to fit around family dinners, school events, and the realities of raising kids. This grounding in family life gave him perspective. He wasn't chasing fame. He was trying to build a life. His wife, Jess, often stood behind the scenes, helping with organization, encouragement, and sometimes even wrenching herself. To Derek, she wasn't just a partner at home, but a partner in the garage, too. That bond mattered more than most fans realized because when tragedy struck, it was family that either held him together or threatened to unravel him completely. The devotion Derek had to his loved ones would be both the anchor that kept him steady and the reason the weight of loss hit so devastatingly hard. Every story has a breaking point, and for Derek Bieri, that moment came in the form of a tragedy so heavy it nearly broke his lifelong passion for cars. Fans know Derek today as a man who shrugs off failure, who laughs when a rusty engine refuses to fire. But before Vice Grip Garage, there was a time when he didn't laugh at all. The details are private. Derek has never laid out every piece publicly, but those closest to him know the weight of what happened. Whether it was the loss of a loved one, a crushing financial blow, or a combination of both, it struck like lightning. One day the garage was his refuge. The next, it felt like a prison. The smell of old gasoline, the squeak of ratchets, the clang of dropped wrenches, all the things that once brought him peace only reminded him of what he had lost. In interviews, Derek has hinted at those dark days without spelling them out. You can hear it when he talks about how things got real or how life will knock you down harder than any car. Fans often think of him as indestructible, but the truth is that for a time, he was a man questioning everything. What makes this chapter so critical is that it reshaped Derek's outlook forever. The tragedy didn't just slow him down, it drained the joy from the very thing that defined him. Cars, once his passion, became background noise in a life suddenly filled with grief. For the first time, Derek Bieri seriously considered leaving it all behind. For Derek, stepping back from cars was unthinkable, but in the aftermath of tragedy, it became reality. He stopped spending nights in the garage. Projects sat untouched. The spark that once drove him to chase impossible builds faded. Walking away wasn't just about tools and grease. It was about identity. For years, Derek had been the car guy, the one who could make the dead run again. But without passion, that title felt hollow. Family and close friends noticed the difference. The energy, the jokes, the relentless drive to push through setbacks, gone. And here's the truth. For a while, Derek didn't care. Cars couldn't bring back what he had lost. Wrenches couldn't fix grief. Even his resourcefulness, his ability to turn junk into something useful, felt powerless against the weight he carried. It was a dangerous place to be, because when a passion like cars defines your entire life, losing it can feel like losing yourself. Derek's story could have ended here. Many men in his position never find their way back. But life has a strange way of planting seeds in the darkest soil. For Derek Bieri, the comeback didn't arrive in a flash of lightning. It started with a flicker. One project, one memory, one reminder that cars weren't just machines. They were connections to people, to stories, to moments he wasn't ready to give up. Some say it was Jess, his wife, who pushed him back into the garage. Others believe it was his kids, curious about the machines their dad used to bring to life. Whatever it was, Derek found himself holding a wrench again. Not for money, not for recognition, but to see if he could still feel something. And slowly, he did. The sound of an engine sputtering back to life wasn't just mechanical. It was healing. Each bolt turned, each spark plug cleaned, each stubborn engine that finally roared reminded him of why he fell in love with cars in the first place. It wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about show cars or trophies. It was about survival, resilience, and the reminder that sometimes even the most hopeless things can be brought back if you refuse to give up. That spark became the foundation of what would soon become Vice Grip Garage. But before millions of people watched him resurrect forgotten junkers, Derek had to first resurrect himself. Out of the ashes of tragedy, Derek Bieri decided to pick up not just a wrench, but a camera. At first, there was nothing glamorous about it. He wasn't chasing YouTube stardom, sponsorships, or a fan base. He was just a man with an old camera, a rusty car, and a question. Could he still make something come alive? The early Vice Grip Garage videos were raw, almost awkward by today's standards. Derek would point the camera at a heap of rust, laugh at its condition, and mutter things like, "Well, this'll probably never work, but let's see." There was no script, no flashy editing, no dramatic music, just honesty, sweat, and Derek's uniquely dry sense of humor. And that's exactly why people connected. He wasn't a polished TV host or a celebrity with a production crew. He was one of us. The guy in the cold garage with cheap tools, taking a gamble on whether an engine that hadn't run in decades would even turn over. Slowly, the channel grew. What began as a personal experiment turned into a phenomenon. People weren't just watching Derek fix cars. They were watching him rebuild himself. And whether fans realized it or not, every "will it run" was a metaphor. If an old junker could fire back to life, maybe we all could. Vice Grip Garage was more than content. For Derek, it became therapy. Every rescue of a rusted car echoed his own recovery. Every success reminded him that broken things aren't worthless. They just need someone who refuses to give up. Fans often say Derek's videos feel different from other car channels, and that's no accident. The difference isn't just in the budget-friendly builds or the Midwestern charm. It's in the weight behind his words, the lived-in understanding that life doesn't always go the way you plan. That authenticity struck a chord. Millions of viewers tuned in not just to see if a dead car would run, but to be reminded that setbacks don't have to be permanent. Derek took his personal pain and turned it into a purpose, showing the world that passion, grit, and resilience can drag even the rustiest dreams back onto the road. In a way, Vice Grip Garage became bigger than Derek ever imagined. It wasn't just a car channel anymore. It was a message, a reminder that no matter how many times life tells you it's over, there's always a chance to crank it over one more time. Today, Derek Bieri stands as proof that passion can survive tragedy. Vice Grip Garage isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. His legacy isn't the number of cars he's rescued or the millions of views he's earned. It's the people he's inspired along the way. Viewers who gave up on their projects picked up tools again because of him. Families started fixing cars together because Derek reminded them it didn't take a fortune to make memories. And people facing hardships saw themselves in his story. A man who lost his spark, but found it again when he needed it most. At 64, 74, or 84, those old cars will still be running because Derek believed in them, and in us. And that's the true legacy of Vice Grip Garage. Not the cars themselves, but the resilience they represent. The tragedy that nearly ended Derek Bieri's passion became the fuel that carried him forward. And in the end, his story proves one timeless truth. Sometimes the hardest roads lead to the most meaningful destinations.